Hello, YouTube. Welcome back to another book review from me, your humble host, Logan Albright. I bet you can't guess what book I'm talking about today. Came out of nowhere for me, too. I wasn't expecting to read this, but I saw it in a used bookstore and thought I'd give it a shot. It is the novel Shame by Salman Rushdie. Now, I don't know very much about Salman Rushdie, apart from the obvious fatwa that was declared against him after his novel The Satanic Verses, and how he had to spend many years in hiding, and how he was recently assaulted and blinded by a stabbing because someone wanted to go after him for things he had written. And I'm not afraid to say that I'm against attacking people with violence because of things they've written. Don't like that one bit. I know it's hard to get away with saying stuff like that on YouTube these days, but I'm going to have the courage to come out and say it. But I've always heard about him through this controversy and through the fact that he was on the lam or in hiding. And I didn't know anything about his books. I just know he's a celebrated writer. He's born in India but educated in Britain. And so I thought I would check him out because he's written many novels and they all sound quite interesting. And this is the one that was on the shelf in the used bookstore, and I thought I'd pick it up. It's fairly quick, fairly short read, and it's called Shame. Originally published in 1983. I believe it's his third novel. I really loved it. I thought it was great. He is a master of the English language. I'm not sure if he was raised with English as his very first language, if he was raised bilingual, or if he later acquired English when he was being educated in Britain. But, a lot of people in India speak English as a first language or are raised bilingual with English, so that's not out of the realm of possibility. But regardless of any of that, he is a master of the English language. I was really impressed with how good his prose is. He weaves these long, intricate sentences full of big vocabulary words that are beautiful and very evocative, but he'll punctuate it very nicely. It's not all long sentences. It's not all hard to understand. In fact, it's very easy to understand, but because of the way that he kind of mixes longer sentences with shorter sentences with very, good punctuation, he really has a sense of the rhythm of language. One of the things he does that I really like is he will take a long florid sentence full of fancy Victorian, very formal words, and he will just stick a very lowbrow word right at the end of it. And it has an effect of creating humor, combining these two different forms of language, highbrow and lowbrow language in the same sentence, especially done that way when it's not expected. That kind of rhythm, that kind of, it's the rhythm of the stand-up comic. It's the rhythm of comedy. You figure out where the beats need to be, and you put the jokes in the right places. And I think he's really funny, and I think his writing is very clever and also very sparkling and beautiful and joyful. So I really like that. The story of Shame takes place, it's basically written like a fairy tale. It takes place in a fictional country that is not quite Pakistan. It involves these three women who are kind of sequestered away in this mansion from society. And between the three of them, they have one child who is called Omar Khayyam Shakil, and they raise him as three mothers, excuse me, and no one really knows which is his real mother. And then he's the hero of the story, and he goes out into the world, and it's about his life and the life of the woman he chooses to marry, his bride. And I don't want to get too much deeper into the plot of this book because the plot is not really the point. The point is the theme of shame and shamelessness and the space between shame and shamelessness. And Salman Rushdie refers to shame as the roots of violence, which I think is very astute and very true. I'm reminded of this book I read by the Harvard psychologist, linguist, social scientist, Steven Pinker, which I've talked about on this channel, called The Better Angels of Our Nature, which is about the history of violence, essentially, and how violence has declined. And one of the things he talks about in that book is how honor societies where, your personal pride is very important, tend to be very violent, because if someone insults you, you have to defend your honor. If someone insults your wife, you have to defend her honor, and this defensive honor typically takes the form of a violent act. And so societies that have that kind of honor culture end up being quite violent ones, and this is what you see in this book. This culture of shame, where people are ashamed of their family members or the things that they've done or their pasts or people they know, and that shame kind of leads to bad consequences, and that's sort of the theme of the book. But it's written in a very fairy tale style way, very fabulous fable, as in the word fable. And I really thought that was lovely. And I know he's written a lot of other books that are sort of in a similar vein, and he's written some books for children, but I love that. And I don't know very much about like the Middle East and this kind of culture. It's Pakistan, or I know a little bit about India, but I don't know much about like the Arabian countries, or Saudi Arabia or Pakistan or any of those places. It's not something that I've ever really pursued an interest in, but it is kind of fascinating now that I'm starting to read about it, to kind of see what the culture is like in those countries. And so I'm enjoying that, although it's a little bit foreign to me. It's nice to open that up as another thing for me to explore. And I definitely want to read more Salman Rushdie books, because I really enjoyed this one and thought it was great. One other thing that he does in the book that I find unusual, and I wouldn't say that I loved it. It might be my least favorite part of the book. It wasn't awfully, terribly distracting, but I found it, maybe a little suboptimal, is he speaks as the narrator quite often. And he will interject as the narrator of the book, presumably as himself, as Salman Rushdie, and he talks about creating the characters and writing the story, and that it's fictional, and kind of his motivations for writing it, and things like that. And there'll be these interjections periodically throughout the tale from the narrator. I wasn't a huge fan of that, because to me it broke the kind of magical spell that the fairy tale was weaving over me. I like to be more immersed in it. It's sort of like, makes me think a little bit of The Princess Bride, where, the book, where you have this, very fairy tale like traditional story, but in the footnotes, or you have little interjections by the translator or the abridger or the narrator, and it kind of breaks you out of it a little bit. It's fun. It's done really humorously in The Princess Bride, so I don't mind it so much. But here I found it kind of shattered the illusion a little bit. But very compelling, great characters, beautiful prose, and not too long, which is always nice. So I really liked Shame. I had a great time reading it. I definitely want to read more of his books, so please feel free to let me know in the comments which ones I should read. I know Midnight Children is heavily acclaimed. It won the Booker Prize, and it won like the best of the Booker Prize of all Booker Prizes. This one also won the Booker Prize, by the way. And I know Satanic Verses is the one that got the fatwa declared on him, so I'm interested in that one as well. But he's written many other books. So if you have a favorite Salman Rushdie novel, please let me know what it is in the comments. I'd be very interested to hear, because I do intend to read more of his books. And in the meantime, if you enjoyed this review of Shame, which, I don't want to tell you about the plot, so you have to go read it yourself, but it's a great book. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, leave comments down below, and be sure to tune back in next week for another book review. I'm not going to tell you what it's going to be. It'll be something very different from Shame, but you'll have to wait and see. Thank you so much for watching. I've been your host, Logan Albright, and I will catch you next time.